Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. My name is Courtney Chase with Genentech, and I'm so excited to welcome you to our first ever Real Talk panel with SMA My Way. SMA My Way is a collaboration with the community, created by the community and for the community, and it's really to support all of you impacted by SMA. And our goal is to share practical tools, celebrate your stories and experiences, and empower connections to help you live your life your way. All right, so now we're going to get to the fun stuff. I'm going to introduce our moderators who really don't need any introduction. That would be Shane and Hannah. So I'm going to turn it over to them. And thank you, Shane and Hannah, for being here today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shane Bertal, and I am so excited to be here with all of you today, hosting this amazing panel alongside my wife and partner in crime, Hannah. I have to say before we begin, just a little tidbit of info. Hannah and I are currently both sick, which is wonderful. It's not COVID, we were tested, and so we're in the clear there, but we're coughing a lot. So if we have to mute ourselves or go off video for a minute to take a sip of water, please be kind. But today we are so excited to have members of the SMA community coming together to talk about their real life experiences.
Yes, today we're going to be discussing and debunking some common myths about dating and relationships. And joining us for our discussion are our fellow SMA My Way contributors, who many of you already know.
So let's introduce our panelists.
Yes.
First up, we have Zarek, who is a YouTuber, podcaster, and lover of all things life and people. Zarek, what's up?
Hey, Ray, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for joining us today.
Of course, it's such an honor. I'm really excited.
We're so excited. Next up is Megan, author and speaker, a mother of two who happens to be married to her high school sweetheart. Hi, Megan.
Hi, everybody. How's it going?
We're good. How are you?
Good. I'm super excited to be here today.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Hannah, who is also serving as a panelist. Hannah and I have dated for over 4 years, and we were married about a year ago. Wow. Is today our anniversary?
Nope.
No. All right, so let's go to the next slide. And before we begin, we're going to jump into a poll. So we'd like all of you to take a minute and provide an answer to the question on screen.
We'll just wait a little bit longer. What?
Nothing. I would answer, I'm single.
Okay, Shane, thank you for that. There we go. All right, so we have 37% saying I'm single, 12% just started dating someone, 20% are in a long-term relationship, 24% are married, and 7% say it's complicated.
I think that goes for all relationships.
Yeah. So we're happy to say that regardless of your response to this question, there will definitely be some useful perspective for you from the panelists today.
Awesome. All right, so let's jump into some of the topics that we have today. So dating and relationships mean that you have to put yourself out there, but it can sometimes be easier to say that than to actually do it. So let's talk about this a little bit. Zarek, can you tell us a little bit about the first time you put yourself out there and maybe what motivated you to do that?
Yeah, so for me, it all came very natural because I've always been like very outgoing, very talkative when I go out and stuff. So it never was like, oh, I'm gonna decide like, oh, I'm gonna put myself out there today. It always just came, it just came naturally and it wasn't really like forced one day. But for me, it was really easy. I just got online and, do some online dating apps and stuff, but mostly just like conversating with people when I go out with my brother to like shows and concerts and stuff. And I think that's what I've always liked more is like really organic, natural conversations out in the world, more than I like the whole online dating thing.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. How about you, Megan?
All right, guys. Yeah, I agree with you, Zarek. I definitely like more of that natural versus a super forced thing. For me, I was actually in high school when I started dating, and I knew that I wanted the focus to be developing like a really good friendship. I knew if I could get a friend first, then maybe we could develop into, a romantic relationship later. And I think that it went pretty well, being that Jake and I have been now for 10 years. So.
That's amazing. Yeah. I agree. I think that starting small can be really helpful. So like I began writing about my hopes and fears about dating on a blog, and I did so anonymously for a while because I was a little bit nervous about talking about all that and being vulnerable in that way. And then I began to get comments and messages from people encouraging me and telling me that I was worthy of a relationship. And kind of that slow building of confidence gave me the final, like, I went ahead with it and I revealed who I was, which was kind of like my first time for putting myself out there.
Yeah, I think I was able to learn pretty early on that everyone has insecurities, and it's also something that we all have to work through. And it really has nothing to do with being disabled. It's really a human thing. Everyone's got stuff they've got to work through. So.
Yeah, dating is scary regardless of ability.
All right, can we go to the next slide, please? Putting yourself out there is a first step, but expectations and more specifically, managing expectations is also important. So Megan, how do you handle or how did you handle when a date or a relationship doesn't go well or isn't what you expected it to be?
Well, oh man, that's always a hard one, but I think communicating is like the best thing and the most important thing. But I think one thing I had to learn is like you don't have to be with that person. If it didn't go well, like it's okay. You don't, you're not tied to that person forever. I think that's kind of the point of dating and kind of the point of discovering yourself and discovering who's out there and what would mesh well with you. But I think part of that is communicating right off the bat. Like, what do you want in a relationship, or what are some of your practical needs, even? Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, sorry, I was doing your line.
Oh, you want to go?
No, go ahead. I want to hear your line.
No, but Zarek, how about you? How did you handle or how do you handle dates or, relationships that aren't going how you wanted them to?
For me, I'm very like family oriented. So like whenever I have problems or like arguments with whoever I'm with at the time, I really open up to my brother and also my friends. So it's always been my way of like kind of like therapy, because there's some times where you're just like, oh man, I'm really struggling. But for me also like really I like communicating my problems with that person, like we're being really open on what's bothering you. Because at the end of the day, just holding it in makes it so much worse. It doesn't help nobody.
Yeah, absolutely. I also remember leaning on my family and friends to keep my mind occupied, in the early days after a breakup when I was just feeling sad and, nothing seemed right. But I reminded myself that breakups are normal for everyone. Like it's a part of life. And it doesn't mean that dating is futile. It just means that you haven't found the right person yet. Hannah, do you have anything to add to that?
No, yeah, I think things happen in life to all of us, and sometimes we create or set expectations in our heads that don't work out. I remember on one of our early dates, we went to the movies and Shane ate some popcorn like right before the movie started. It was like during the ads.
I didn't eat the popcorn, I inhaled the popcorn.
Shane tried to eat the popcorn and he inhaled a piece, choked on it, and then coughed for the entire movie, like pretty loudly, like enough that we should have left.
Oh, definitely.
It was rude.
I don't know why we stayed.
But it could have been super humiliating. It could have ruined the date, but we just laughed about it after. And I'm thinking of one other time when we were visiting a family friend of my family friend. Shane was with me.
So these are just all my worst moments.
Your worst. I'm thinking of like times when it went wrong.
Yeah.
It's generally you that you do it.
Speak for yourself.
But it was still early on in our relationship, like very early. And Shane had some stomach issues while we were there. And he was nervous about having me help with that. And, I think he thought that I wouldn't want to help. But obviously I didn't mind. And it ended up being a really funny memory for us instead of like a really terrible night.
Yeah, I definitely remember both of those occasions. And the thing that sticks out to me is that we made it funny and it's just a great memory that we have now, rather than like this moment that we're like, we can never speak of that again.
Exactly. All right, can we go to the next slide, please? So now let's focus on some more practical aspects of dating. Online dating is popular, especially with COVID. And a common question in the community is, when do you disclose that you have SMA, or what or how much do you tell the other person, and when?
So for me, I've always been very open about the fact that I have SMA. It's kind of hard not to be. And if a person is going to be uncomfortable with that, they're probably not a real good long-term option. So gauging that upfront is helpful for me. I've done some online dating apps before, and I found it to be an overall difficult situation. And so I found that writing my blog became a better avenue for me to meet people. Jarrett, what are your thoughts on like your first sharing that you have SMA if you meet someone online?
Well, for me, like like all my pictures have like the wheelchair in it. I've never hidden it. I rock it with pride, And then also like I'm very open to any questions, because that's usually what the first day or two of talking, it usually comes out like, so hey, I don't mean to be mean, but what's wrong with you, But I've never been angry, or no question is a bad question, right? But it all comes out organically. It's never been like forced or like pushed, or like first thing you see on my profile. I just let it come out organically, and if it doesn't and they don't want to ask questions, that's fine. But I always make it known that it's okay. You don't want them to feel awkward, or like that be a barrier in your future relationship, whether it be a friendship or an actual relationship.
Yeah, I think that's a really good approach. Megan, I'm not going to ask you this question because I know that you and your husband are high school sweethearts, but I will ask you my next question, which is, when you are on a date, how do you handle the practical aspects? And how do you handle maybe sometimes needing like physical help from your partner or others while you're out on a date?
Sure. Well, I think that my experience with dating someone new, or someone that didn't know my limitations yet, or what I was physically capable of doing or not doing, it kind of boils down to two things: communicating what your needs are, like it's okay to ask for help, but also be considerate and kind to the other person, because they probably are new at it. They have no idea. Jake at that time never dated anybody that was in a wheelchair, or needed help lifting a heavy glass or anything like that. But I would say that how you ask someone is even more important than what you're asking. I think generally, if they're a good human being, they don't mind helping. But if you're demanding help, or you're rude, or maybe not asking kindly, they may not feel appreciated or comfortable even with assisting you. So just being considerate that they're probably new at it. You know, maybe using a phrase like, hey, do you mind helping me, whether it's open a door, or do you mind helping me get something out of my bag? Or I think simplifying it like that makes it simpler for both parties.
I totally agree. When I go out on a date, I usually have my brother and his girlfriend, in the same area. And if my date isn't really like comfortable with helping me with something, I'll text my brother for help. But for the most part, it's always really good for me, or in my opinion, to ask ahead like what they're comfortable with, and that way you have an idea of what you're gonna need help with, so you can plan ahead and think about it. And that's what I usually do. So I can ask my brother, hey, when I text you, can you help me, drink some water or feed me or whatever. But it usually comes out very naturally, and it doesn't. It's not. It's never been really awkward.
Yeah, that's important. I try to present the realities of caregiving with like a lightheartedness and a humor, because I think it can be a little bit scary for people that don't have experience with it. So I try to make it funny to make them feel more comfortable. And then there are the practical aspects that make a date easier. Like Hannah drives our van. We sit next to each other at restaurants so that Hannah can give me bites of food. And this stuff was originally kind of embarrassing for me, but over time I learned not to worry about it as much.
Yeah, and we like to explore new places together when we're like going on dates, but we always have a mindset that not everything will be accessible, so that we're not, disappointed when we get there, and we manage our expectations that way. And similarly, when we do bigger stuff, like when we fly, we tend to take my mom or someone with us to help because it can be difficult. And like what Shane was talking about, keeping things fun, really early on in our relationship, when I was learning Shane's care, he made a bingo sheet of like things, it was like putting on my socks and giving me a bite of food so I could like cross them off and get bingo, just like cute things that he did when we were dating to make it more fun. And I wanted to learn Shane's care during that time, but it was nice that it was more of like a fun game.
Yeah, I think all of this, everything I'm hearing here is about communicating with kindness and understanding. And if you start there, you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. All right, so our next topic, Zaret, from your perspective, what is important for maintaining a healthy relationship?
I think communication and respect for sure. You need to communicate what makes each other happy. You don't want to be like uncomfortable, because at the end of the day, if you hold it in, it just comes out eventually, and it's never fun that way. And respect, because when you respect the person you love, um, it really makes them feel special, and that love comes back to you, and it's shown right back just as much as you give them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think communication, respect covers it. I think, we all deserve to be treated well, have our needs met, be with someone who cares about you. And I think caring for us, people with SMA, is part of how they show love. But I think, as long as we're mindful of being respectful and appreciative and, keeping things peaceful with each other. So communication, yes, is key. I think, like Shane and Hannah, have fun. Have fun dating your spouse or your, significant other. I think that keeps things alive and fun.
Yeah, for us, we definitely learned over time, how to sorry, how to
There it is.
there's the sickness, how to maintain our relationship. And as with all relationships, it's still a work in progress, obviously. What does that look?
You're the one firing shots over there.
But compromise is also important. And for example, Shane and I have very different sleep schedule preferences. I'm very much a night owl. He's very much an early bird. So that has caused some arguments over the years. And now we have, a sort of alternating throughout the week schedule so that we both get our days where we have what we want and we both are happy about it,
Yeah. And I think that finding someone with shared interests and values is also important, and obviously a shared sense of humor. Hannah and I bonded really quickly because we had a lot in common, and that gave us things to talk about and things to do together. I agree with Hannah that compromise is very, very important. I often say that, it's important to remember that you and your partner are on the same team, and you should both be working towards the same goals. Because sometimes it can get to be where you each have a different opinion about something, and you feel like maybe you're not on the same team, but you have to remember that you are, and just supporting each other along the way in your individual pursuits in life is really important. Making sure that the other person knows that you're there for them no matter what. So, yeah. All right, next slide, please. So we touched on this topic a little bit earlier, but how do you guys go about navigating caregiving in a relationship? And how do you kind of divide up the responsibilities and roles in a relationship? And I can kind of begin. So for me and Hannah, caregiving is just a natural part of our day, and we don't really differentiate between care and relationship stuff. It's not like, when I need help, I'm like, all right, pause. Now you're going to be my caregiver. Put your gloves on or whatever. And it helps that we work together, so we aren't separated for long periods of time. We're like doing stuff together all day long. But the other thing is that we have complementary skills and abilities. So I handle the organization and the business side of our adulthood, and Hannah handles house stuff and caregiving stuff. So it's a good balance in that way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Shane makes phone calls, when our air conditioner stops working and we need a mechanic, and he handles scheduling because we're busy, and we never miss appointments or meetings and due dates like we would if I was in charge of that kind of thing. And for physical tasks like doing the dishes, if he's free, he'll sometimes sit with me while I do it to keep me company or keep me entertained while I do those tasks.
Yeah. Megan, how about you and your relationship? How do you and your husband share responsibilities?
It's actually funny listening to you guys because I think it's really similar. We were just talking yesterday and he's like, I'm just not good at like administrative stuff. And you are. I think that's just where we balance each other. And I think that's cool in any relationship, is finding like, how do you guys complement each other? But I think for every interable couple, it takes time to navigate that. I remember when we were first married, a lot of our discussions or arguments had to do with maybe like an expectation that I had, and he wasn't naturally doing that, or, so we had to talk about it, and compromise is a huge thing, things that I had to learn to let it go, or, he had to learn, oh, this is how she prefers it, or whatever. Like it was all learning each other. But again, I think it kind of boils down to communication. Like we're on the same team, like you said, want the same thing here. Like how can we live peacefully and happily together, and each doing our own, separate roles in that relationship is important.
I totally agree. I think, excuse me. I think communicating on what each other's strong suits are and supporting each other's strong suits. Like if you're good at one thing, I'm good at this, so you do that and I'll do this, has always been really cool. Now, as far as like caregiving, it really does just come naturally, especially if the person cares for you. If the person truly cares for you, they're not gonna have a problem helping you with your daily life. Just like Hannah helps Shane every day. And I'm pretty sure at the beginning she had no problem helping at all. And it just comes naturally. It just like it's nothing's too different from like a typical relationship. It's just if the person cares for you, they care for you and they help you out, you know, to the moon and back, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, can we go to the next slide, please? So something that is familiar to all of us over the last year is how much it has changed our approach to dating and relationships. So I'm curious to hear how it may have changed for you and or made things better.
For me, it didn't really change too much. I mean, I've always stuck to online dating. Now, I did stay home for like a year and a half. Like, I never left the house. So a lot of my, uh, like dating experiences have been like through Zoom calls and like, just online FaceTime stuff. Uh, but it really didn't like feel like too different. Because I've always used like FaceTime to get to know someone first before going out to meet them because I mean you want to make sure that they're comfortable with like the whole situation, you know. So that's I've always used that as like a way to break the ice and get to know each other a little bit.
Yeah, I think this last year, well, gosh, almost 2 years now since all the crazy stuff has happened. I think we've just learned to appreciate like the simpler things. You know, we're parents to two kiddos too, so it was like we had to learn to play at the house and play in the backyard. And you know, for us together, you know, dinners at home or cooking together or watching movies late at night, you know, those kind of things.
Yeah, I think for us, the last year and a half of extreme closeness at home has made us a stronger couple in some ways. You know, we've had to be creative, finding activities to, you know, keep the boredom away. We developed some new mutual hobbies together, which was fun, like cooking. I mean, it was more like Shane really liked to cook and I cooked with him. And then video games, like I really like to play video games and Shane would do it with me.
I would watch.
Shane would watch.
I would give criticism.
Yeah.
What you're doing.
Tell me what I'm doing wrong.
We made bread for a while.
That was a phase we went through. We went through just, you know, a couple different phases of like, what should we do now? But we also learned to identify when we were reaching annoyance levels with each other and,
Yeah.
you know, going our separate ways in the house and, you know, doing our own activities and keeping our communication, keeping our communication lines open, you know, to make sure we were both doing well.
Yeah, I think overall this year has really taught us like how to adjust what we're used to doing in one way or another. And I think it's nice that, you know, we found that we can do that. Like even in the midst of this unprecedented thing in our world, we're still able to have fun together and, you know, we still love each other at the end of the day. All right, so we go to the next slide, please. All right, so now it is time to talk about affection. Affection is obviously an important part of a relationship. So let's talk about showing and receiving affection. Now, personally, I am a cuddler.
Yeah, cuddling is a great way to achieve physical closeness. And, you know, initiating a kiss verbally is really nice. Shane does that a lot because obviously I can initiate one physically, he can initiate one verbally. And physical intimacy is a part of our relationship too. And it looks different for every couple on earth. And there's no right way or no wrong way to share intimacy as long as both people in the relationship are happy.
Yeah, totally. And for me at the beginning, it's really kind of like I don't know, sometimes like a little awkward, right? Because as someone in a wheelchair who can't like initiate first, you have to be very verbal about it. So I think little by little, once you get more comfortable with each other, for me, like I've always been like, hey, come here, give me a hug. And I've always been, I'm also a cuddler too. So I've always been like very verbal about like how I want affection and stuff like that. And I think it's important, even in a normal relationship. You know what I mean? Just be very communicative, be very open to each other's like wants and needs.
Yeah, definitely. I know in our relationship, it was important that we learned how each other like to receive like affection and how to show it. So my husband is a total words of affirmation, physical touch. He likes cuddling. And I liked giving gifts, but that meant nothing to him. Like I'd give him gifts and like wait for this response, and he's like, oh, like, and so I think it was important for us to learn that side of each other and to be super intentional. Like I have to intentionally, encourage him with words or tell him how much I appreciate him or how proud I am. And we prioritize that. But yeah, communicating what you like, it's a really good place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember early on in our relationship, I would initiate kisses like verbally. So I'd be like, kiss? But then over time, that felt more and more awkward. So I just started like doing the kiss face.
He just starts it.
Yeah, I just jump up there. All right, can we go to the next slide, please? This has been a really great conversation, and I'd like to turn it over now to all of you one last time for any final thoughts that you have before we dive into the Q&A.
I think for me, I just want everybody to know that we're all worthy of love, and it doesn't matter your situation. There is someone out there for you. You just need to dig a little deeper and show your good qualities right on your sleeve, and just be patient. There's love for you, and you will find it. I promise.
Yeah, I think if I had to give anyone advice, final thoughts on relationships, I would just want to, really encourage you that it's important to be yourself, to know that you're worthy of love. Love yourself first so that somebody else can love you. And yes, like Zarek said, someone's out there for you that is a great match for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'll just add that, for many people living with SMA, entering the dating world can feel overwhelming. For me, it took a really long time to feel confident enough to begin exploring that area of life. I let the fear of rejection and the unknown stop me from even trying. And then once I finally did try, and I put myself out there, I realized that many of my fears were not at all based in reality. And I began to see myself as a worthy partner. All of us are worthy partners. And it's important to remember that. So this was wonderful. I had a great time hearing from all of you. And now let's jump into the Q&A.
All right. Thank you, everyone. What a great conversation. So appreciate it. We got some questions through the process. So I'm going to just ask all of you some of the questions we got and have you guys give your perspective on it. All right. So one of the questions we got, I'm going to put this out to all of you. And let's start, Megan, with you. When you were younger, did adults in your life reference your future as one where you had a life partner and as someone who was going to be a parent?
That is an excellent question. I would definitely say that my family encouraged that, as cliche as it sounds, that everything was possible. And they never limited, what my life or my future would hold. And, they would, yes, use terms like, oh, your boyfriend, or when when you get married, or, whatever. I remember being really little and like little girl. And I would talk about, well, one day when I'm a mommy, and they never would say, oh, well, we're not sure that would happen. No, they just, yes, they treated me like every other child. And yes, when you're a mommy, you'll get to do that, or, so I think that was always instilled and implanted in me, that was part of my future. It was never a question for me if I could get married. It was when I got married, or because that was a desire that I had. And I think that I would encourage anyone, if that is something that you want, like, it is possible for you, no matter if you're, for lack of better terms, more disabled or less, it's possible. So yeah, I think I did have that encouragement and foreshadowing of my life as a child.
Oh, thanks for sharing, Megan. Zarek, any additional thoughts from you? How about with your experience?
My parents, my family in general, I've always been very supportive of the idea of, having a family, especially my dad. He's very into sports, and he can't wait, to maybe have some grandkids that could be into baseball and stuff. But I think it's very important for anybody that's raising someone uh, with any kind of disability, really, is to keep that idea alive even when they're younger, because you want them to know that it's something that's very possible. I mean, just because we're in our situation doesn't mean we can't be moms and dads and have a very healthy relationship. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's all about the people around you, the support. It really first it takes a village to raise us, right? But I think with our families, it would be even easier and way better to raise another family, another generation.
Thank you. Shane and Hannah, anything else to add?
Yeah, just two quick thoughts. One thing is that I remember some arguments I had with my parents where I was like not happy with something they were doing, and they would say something to the effect of like, "One day when you have kids, you'll understand." And like they weren't really encouraging me in that moment, but it was there, this belief that I would have kids and go on and have a wife and stuff. A wife and stuff. But the other thing I appreciate that they did or didn't do is like when I was in high school and early college years and I hadn't yet, begun dating, they didn't make a big thing of it. It wasn't like every day they were like, "So, do you like anyone yet? How's that going?" Because I think that would have put a lot of pressure on the situation. So they were cool with like me moving at my own pace, and they just had a general assumption that I would, get married and have kids.
Thank you. Very interesting perspectives from all three of you. A couple of things to the audience. Just want to remind you, you can go to the little triangle that says questions, drop down and put in questions there as well. One of the questions we got from the audience is, and I'll put this to Shane and Hannah, how do you guys handle negative comments about your relationship?
Oh, good question.
Do you want to handle that? Or?
Yeah, I think Shane and I both handle it differently. He isn't really bothered by them. Like sometimes he can, if you read the 100th mean comment of the day, it can get him down. But generally, Shane has a pretty tough skin when it comes to what people say, versus me, who is like extremely disturbed by every single comment I read. So I just don't really read the comments, on our YouTube channel or wherever it is. I try to avoid them if possible, so that I don't get upset. But when we do see them, we try to remember that like we know what is true. If someone is saying they're fake or, Shane must be a terrible husband, whatever they're saying, we know that that's not true. So
yeah,
we try not to let it bother us.
I have nothing to add. That was perfect.
Oh, okay.
And I think, Megan, a question, if you're out with your family and you notice that people are maybe being judgmental or being negative towards you and your situation, how do you guys handle that as a family unit?
I think sometimes we accidentally we tend to lean kind of like Shane and Hannah a little more towards the humorous side and might crack a joke, or we try to just make light of it because oftentimes either they're uncomfortable or don't know how to handle something, or they're making an assumption that's just totally wrong. We used to have a nanny that lived with us, and my kids are very fair skinned and blonde, and she was blonde, and they always would assume she was the mom and I was just like the tag along. People had like come up to say that to me, and we would just laugh about it, or we would make some joke about it. But I think kind of what Hannah said is, at the end of the day, we know where we stand with things. We try to be gracious when responding, especially because like my kids are there and we're trying to like be good examples and respectful. But at the end of the day, we know we're happy. And oftentimes when people are making comment, like if it's straight a rude comment or mean comment, it's usually out of their own ignorance or they're just unhappy people. So we try not to take that on. you know, ourselves, or we just try to show them like, no, we're super happy. We love each other. We love our family. Like, we're doing great, you know? So I think you take every situation as it comes, but unfortunately those do arise.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing. And Zarek, I know you mentioned that a lot of times if you are out on a date, your brother's there with his girlfriend. And have you experienced any of kind of negative actions or negative comments? And if you have, how have you addressed them?
I have had this one incident where the waiter was hitting on my girlfriend at the time, and also wasn't talking to me. It was like straight up like treating me like a child. Like he thought she was like my nurse, right? And it really like rubbed me the wrong way at first, but then I reverted to my, you know, distinguish hate with love idea. So I just uh, educated him on how disrespectful he's being. And I also told the manager because it really felt like it was coming from a very like purposeful um, place. And but it also really depends because there's also been times where like people are just ignorant, like Megan said, and they just need to be acknowledged, but in a kind way. Yeah, I mean, there's just different ways to go about it. Sometimes you do have to speak up and get a little uh, aggressive, and that's where my brother comes in. And but for the most part, for me, it's always been smiles and loves. Because at the end of the day, if they're that mean to say something bad or ignorant, they need more love than anybody else because it's a horrible place to be.
Yeah, our world needs a little more of that right now. So thank you. All right. So another question we've actually gotten before, as well as from the audience, is what drew you together? So Megan, for you and your husband, you mentioned that you met in high school. What was the initial attraction? What drew you to each other?
I would say that his sense of humor is what made me attracted to him. He was super funny, still is really funny, and he really enjoyed that I was really outgoing and just fun. And we've had people on our socials make assumptions that he was into people in wheelchairs, and I laugh because I'm like that a thing, you know? But
Yeah.
and he would always say like, no, I didn't date you because you were in a wheelchair. Like, I dated you because I liked you and you were fun and you were outgoing and we had a common group of friends. I think that was really important because we knew we had similar, you know, a similar friend group, so it made it easy to hang out with each other. But I would say we let our personalities, you know, be the thing that we fell in love with each other.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. All right. So um, Shane, a question that came in, have you ever had self-esteem issues or just insecurities where you felt insecure about something? If so, could you discuss it with the audience?
Yes, a resounding yes. I think that, you know, the way that disability is viewed in our society is not wildly positive. And I picked up on a lot of that growing up, and because of that, my self-worth went down. And so as I, you know, was in middle school and high school and saw my friends pairing off into couples and really didn't see a whole lot of interest in me in the relationship aspect, I came to believe that I was not worthy of a relationship, that no one would ever want to, you know, be with someone in a wheelchair. What kind of became or what acted as the turning point for me was as I got older, I began to meet and learn about more adults living with SMA who were married and had children. And I had never seen that before. So I had no kind of example that that was possible. And as I met more and more of them and got to know them and learn from them, I realized that, you know, some of my many of my insecurities were not real. I didn't need to feel them. And that was where I kind of was at when I began writing my blog and talking about some of those things.
Thanks for sharing. All right, Zarek, any advice regarding young adults or teens trying to navigate the new dating world with a disability, such as SMA?
Yeah, no, of course. I would say confidence. Confidence is key. Now, I know that's very difficult in our situation because we have trouble sometimes seeing ourselves as worthy of love, right? But I promise that you are, right? And that confidence goes a long way, even if it's just a little bit. Now, I'm not talking about being like overly confident because but understanding that you are a awesome person at the end of the day really, really helps.
All right, thank you. Okay, so another question that came in, a similar vein. So this person has a best friend who is their crush, and they can't seem to get over her. So do you have any advice?
Yeah, just go for it. Look, what's the worst that can happen? He says no, and you're just friends. Because at the end of the day, you're friends, and that shouldn't. If they're really friends with you, that shouldn't like stop ever, right? So worst thing he or she can say no is no, right? But I think just going for it. That's what I would do. I would just do it.
All right, thank you.
Can I jump in on that one really quick?
Yes, make it go, yes. Of course.
Jake and I were friends to start with. That's how it all began. We were just friends. This wasn't like, okay, let's go out on a date. We were together, and I actually was the one who we had hung out a lot, and I was kind of getting the feel like, okay, either we like each other or we just hang out way too much. And so I sat him down one time and I was just really honest. And I said, like, I do have feelings for you, and if you like me, like, this is the route I want to go. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, it was super simple. And it's scary to think to do that because you're putting yourself out there and putting yourself, all your emotions, and you're really vulnerable then. But like Zarek said, like, what do you have to lose? It's better to be honest and hope for them to come out of it.
Mhm. All right, thank you. All right, so another question that came in, and maybe Shane and Hannah, I'll start with you guys. When you have arguments, how do you handle it if it's before bedtime? So what's your philosophy?
I just don't go to bed that night.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's the joke. Your thoughts, that's interesting. So that is something that we say is a very beneficial part of our relationship. When we have a fight or an argument, there's always kind of a forced reason to come back together, which is that, Hannah is the one who physically puts me into bed at night. And that one, maybe to, people that aren't familiar with that might sound like a bad thing, like that we have to reconcile our argument or whatever it is. But it's been really helpful. Like, we use that opportunity to, laugh and try to get over it as much as we can. And I think because of it, our arguments don't last as long as maybe they would otherwise, because we're both very stubborn people, not very good at admitting fault. And so, the caregiving stuff lets us just move on and focus on other things.
Yeah, but I will say, like, if it's a serious argument, like, if we're still mad, I'll still obviously, sorry, help Shane into bed. But we don't always use that time to like resolve our
That's
fight.
true, yeah.
We don't have the philosophy where like you can't go to bed angry. We still, if it's better for us to talk about it in the morning when we're not really tired and already annoyed, then we'll just wait until the morning and then
Yeah.
discuss whatever the issue is. But yeah, coming together for whatever, helping Shane do something is definitely beneficial for us.
Thank you for sharing. All right, so to all of you, what is the biggest thing that a person with SMA can contribute in a relationship?
That's a big question.
Yeah, it is.
I would say anything that a non-disabled person can contribute. The most important things in a relationship are love and support and care and, emotional connection. It goes on and on. And
Yeah.
we're capable of providing all of those things. Like I'm not gonna remodel our kitchen. I'm sorry, Hannah. But I support her in every aspect of life.
Yeah.
And I think that's more important than being able to make a cabinet. I don't know why I'm on the kitchen
Yeah.
remodeling.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say just giving your significant other like who you truly are. Like you have a lot to give, everybody does. It's really not about physical strength, I think. Or you'll learn how to balance that if the other person's physically the one doing stuff. Like it comes back to, how you guys both balance each other out. But I think the best gift you can give someone else is like your wholeness. So like work on you and love you and yeah, just be the best version of yourself for the other person.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think for me, I've always been the guy that like supports no matter what. If they got something to do, whether it be school or wherever they want to, their dreams. I've always been the one to like support them and show them that they have what it takes to do that. Also, it really just showing them your heart, showing them love and respect. I think is what we have really to offer, and I think it's unique. We we don't have the ability to do the physical things inside, but with that taken away, we've been given other ways, and it all goes back to adapting your life, and I think it's really cool that we're able to do those little things.
I also forgot to mention that maybe the most important thing that I contribute is that I don't eat very much. So like I'll order dessert when we're out at a restaurant together and I'll take like 2 bites. And that means Hannah has like her dessert and most of my dessert. And if that's not a perk, I don't know what is.
That's so true.
Yes,
Keep date.
yes. As a sweet person, yes. All right, so we thank you everyone for all of the amazing questions. We actually have a lot left to get through, but we only have a couple of minutes left. So I'm going to ask you guys to just comment on one last question, and then I'll turn it back to you, Shane, to close it out. So for all of you, what activities or practices were most influential in shaping your outlook on friendships and relationships? So when you look back at your life from childhood into adulthood, what were those practices or activities that were influential in shaping your outlook?
I think for me, it was just being involved, like being intentional to go be involved in things, go make friends, go to activities that, your college age friends are going to or whatever, and not being afraid. Yes, there's things that we have to think about that are extra, is that place accessible? Am I going to be able to eat when I get the, all these things, but don't let that stop you from actually going and doing and being active and making friends, dating, all of it. Like just put yourself out there and don't be afraid.
I would just add on, I agree completely. For me, I lived at home during college, and that could have been, that could have really inhibited my social life if I allowed it to, but I like made time to be on campus for like social stuff. So I would go over, even though I didn't have class, and just hang out with my friends, and building in that time each week allowed me to maintain friendships and learn about relationships and things like that as well.
Yeah. So for me, I have for those who don't know, I have a able-bodied brother who's older than me, and he's in a rock band. So my social life has always been kind of crazy. You know what I mean? I go to concerts, you know, big concerts, and I hang out with his friends a lot. I grew up with them, so I've always been very social. You know, going out to different places and being very outgoing. Me and him are like social butterflies, so we like to conversate and have fun. So my social life has always been really, really interesting.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. All right. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. Shane, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you close us out.
All right, thank you so much. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'd also like to thank Zaret, Megan, and Hannah for joining me today and for sharing all of your experiences about dating and relationships. We hope that all of you watching found this discussion to be helpful, and don't forget that you can check back onto the SMA My Way website where we'll be posting videos from today's discussion, and talk to all of you soon. Thank you. Bye.